In today's video, we break down Ruben Amorim's shocking change of heart on Casemiro, Gary Neville's fiery reaction post-match, and Pep Guardiola's comments that reveal Man City's next transfer target. Don't miss out, stay tuned for all the latest. Why Ruben Amorim has changed his mind on Manchester United midfielder Casemiro. Casemiro is back in favor at Man United after a long spell in the wilderness, and Ruben Amorim has explained his change of heart. Casemiro is back in favor at Manchester United after taking on board what Ruben Amorim wanted him to improve during a spell out of the side. The Brazilian has now started 5 of the last 6 games, having played just 19 minutes in the Europa League and FA Cup between December 30th and February 16th. During that period, Amorim said the decision was a selection call and suggested the 5-time Champions League winner with Real Madrid lacked the intensity to get into his side. But Casemiro has gradually worked his way back into contention and played the full 90 minutes in Sunday's goalless draw with Manchester City, with Amorim full of praise for the 33-year-old and the improvements he has made. The important thing is that Casemiro won everything with Real Madrid, he said. He wasn't playing because I understood in the moment that he was not the best option to the way we want to play. But he continued to work. I look at my players in the same way. If you improve what we ask of them, they have the opportunity. If they play well, they continue to play. That was the situation of Casemiro. The credit is all to the player. So he's our player and continues to be our player. Amorim was generally happy with United's performance against City but wants more goal threat from his side. I think again we created some chances. The game was completely different from Nottingham, of course, against the different opponents, but we had the same lack of goal threat, he said. We created situations, sometimes we did it well, and Ederson was there, so it's really important to score goals during football matches. Gary Neville rips into what he saw moments after final whistle of Man United versus Man City. Manchester United and Manchester City played out a dull goalless draw at Old Trafford, and former United captain Gary Neville wasn't happy with players' behavior at full-time. Gary Neville was far from impressed by the behavior of Manchester City and Manchester United players after Sunday's derby draw. The ex-United skipper was unhappy with what he read as players from both sides being satisfied with a point at Old Trafford. Neither team created much of note as the spoils were shared in the scoreless draw. The crowd were on their feet early on as Alejandro Garnacho was fouled just outside the penalty area, but that's more or less as exciting as it got. I think the congratulations and love in that I'm watching says both teams are happy with a 0-0, Neville said during Sky Sports coverage. The best Man City and Man United teams would be very disappointed with the way they've approached the end of that game. It looks like it's Sunday afternoon and they're going to go for a roast dinner together now. They're micromanaged to an inch of their lives, so robotic, and it's symptomatic of a lot of games that we're watching nowadays. I'm disappointed, he added. It's a Manchester derby. It should have more blood, thunder, and risk and courage involved in playing the game and winning the game than that. Neville was similarly frustrated at the end of the first half. It's like we've got to a point in football where teams are frightened to death to give the ball away, make a mistake, take a risk, he said moments before the teams headed in for the halftime break. They're also obsessed with shape. Nothing off the cuff is happening in lots of games. This has got to stop. The excitement and beauty of the Premier League is the sort of thrust and energy and excitement and doing things a little bit differently. This 45 minutes is a non-entity. It's not good enough from either team. City ended the day in 5th, still a point behind Chelsea after the Blues played out a 0-0 draw of their own against Brentford. Newcastle can still overtake them if they beat struggling Leicester City at the King Power Stadium on Monday night. United remain comfortably in the bottom half, but a point against City means they remain 13th. Tottenham Hotspur briefly moved above them on goal difference earlier in the day, beating Southampton 3-1 to confirm the Saints' relegation. United head coach Ruben Amorim was asked about the perceived lack of intensity after the final whistle at Old Trafford. If you look at the moment of both teams not fighting for titles, that changes the game completely, the former Sporting CP boss told Sky Sports. The feeling of winning, not being able to lose 1 point, that feeling is not here. As the coach, it's hard to say that. We need to fight for big things. If we do, then the feeling will be completely different. Not clever enough. Pep Guardiola comments confirm Man City transfer priority. Pep Guardiola praised one of his makeshift defenders as Manchester City drew with Manchester United, but they are comments that read particularly damningly. Surely the last derby was enough to show that Matheus Nunes is not a fullback when he hand-wrapped 2 goals for Manchester United in injury time. Yet in a season where Manchester City defenders have dropped like flies, Núñez has been a necessary right-back option even though he keeps offering evidence that he is not a very good right-back. So with United sure to target him, Pep Guardiola had a plan on Sunday. Núñez would push up high on the right as a touchline-hugging wingback. Bernardo Silva would drop in from midfield and the pair would keep Alejandro Garnacho quiet. Barring the first-minute run from Garnacho that tempted a yellow card from Ruben Dias, the system generally worked, helped by a weak United attack and plenty of inoffensive City possession. But credit where it is due, Núñez did okay and Guardiola went out of his way at full time to double back on himself en route to the dressing room and offer a hug to his out-of-position midfielder. And then he might well have killed Núñez's City prospects in his press conference. He can become a good right-back for the physicality, he said, following praise with comments he will struggle to come back from. I think he's not a player to play in the middle because he's not clever enough in composure. If Guardiola means the middle of defense, that makes sense because Núñez at centre-back would be as disastrous as it sounds. If he means in the middle of midfield, it would bring back memories of when he told Calvin Phillips that he was not suited to playing in a position where there are things happening behind him, so pushed him back into defense. The Núñez praise immediately drew comparisons and Guardiola continued, he has incredible skills and he's learning a lot. Fullbacks always have a big mistake when a cross to the far post where you are, always there sleeping. And he defended really well 2 or 3 crosses from Bruno Fernandes, Patrick Dorgu. He has physicality to do it, he can play that position and he's helped a lot. Guardiola is right that Núñez played well at Old Trafford. One back post header stood out to save a certain goal, but the manager changed his system to keep Núñez from defending one-on-one against Garnacho. It is also important to say he has done well enough out of position in a very difficult season. Guardiola's decision at right-back between Núñez and Rico Lewis comes down to physicality or versatility. Núñez has started more games there since the last derby, but even when he's impressed, he's still blatantly not a fullback. When we started the season and I tell we're going to play Mateus at right back, Nico O'Reilly, left back, you'd tell me, what are you talking about? He said. Man United news. Ruben Amorim hits back at critical Gary Neville after transfer plan slammed. Manchester United battled to a 0-0 draw with neighbours Manchester City over the weekend, with Ruben Amorim and Gary Neville being involved in a verbal back and forth both before and after the game. Manchester United's inconsistent season continued over the weekend against near neighbours Manchester City. The two sides stumbled to a less than inspiring 0-0 draw at Old Trafford on Sunday. The game represented Ruben Amorim's first Manchester derby at Old Trafford, with the Portuguese coach now undefeated in 2 games against City since his arrival. There has of course been plenty of reaction to the draw. That includes both Gary Neville and Roy Keane giving their verdicts on the game as well as the season so far. The stalemate leaves Amorim's men 13th in the Premier League table, with attention now turning to the Europa League and their battle to earn a Champions League spot in the process. With all of that being said, take a look at all of the latest news from Old Trafford from over the past 24 hours. Amorim responds to Neville. Amorim has fired back at Neville after the latter's accusations of a love-in between the players following the below-par showings from both teams in the Manchester derby. Several individuals embraced and hugged after the final whistle, which didn't sit well with Neville, but the man in the home dugout claimed he is constantly critical. I understand everything, said Amorim. I understand that Gary Neville is critical about everything, so I understand that part. I also understand that we are in a moment where we are having the worst season in history. Manchester City won everything in the past, but this season they are struggling. So we are not in the best moment to give the best spectacle to every fan. When we are not fighting for the big things, of course it's different. But you have to look at it within the context of the game, and I understand the critical aspect of players who played in this game in a different way because they were fighting every time for the titles, so it's a different context. Neville slams transfer approach. On the topic of United icon Neville, he is torn into the club's transfer acumen, having pointed to 4 players who should still be at Old Trafford. Speaking before the Manchester derby, he said, "It's going to need smart recruitment. That means getting players out for good prices and getting players in who are undervalued, which is what all teams are trying to do in the league. You could field 4 players that are not at Manchester United anymore, Elanga, Rashford, Welbeck and McTominay behind them. They would do a lot better than the current players as a 4 up front. United have let players go, and I'm not saying they're the solution right now. But they've replaced players who weren't at the standard with players who are not at that level." Keane dismisses Amorim claim.